It's Friday night. It's the preview show. It's the No Nay Never podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the preview show brought to you by the No Nay Never podcast. I am your co-host, bit of a sideshow, Natalie Bromley, but joining me as ever is the main man himself, the hero of the hour, the man that without just the preview show would not exist, Dave Statman Roberts. Dave, how are you?
I'm well, Natalie. I'm not sure I'm going to live up to that introduction, though.
Of course you are. You always say this, and of course you do. How's your international break been? We had a week off last week. It was great.
We did, and for once there was quite a lot going on, wasn't there, with Nick Pope getting a start for England and one or two others playing as well. There's more exciting than usual, the international break with the Burnley player involvement.
Yeah, it was. We had Nick Pope in the England game. We had Robbie Brady captain in the Ireland squad. And by the looks of things, I'm not sure Hendrick played, which I was confused at, but I'll look at that later on. We've had deals, Chris Wood, Ashley Barnes, now Charlie Taylor have all signed new deals. And then outside of Turf Moor, there's all sorts of shenanigans going on at Spurs. So I think our Spurs preview is going to be colourful, don't you think?
Entertaining, let's say.
Definitely. Did you see any of the England game, the second one, Dave? How did you think Pope did?
Yeah, he was steady. I mean, he got a clean sheet. It wasn't the toughest game going. Obviously, had over the two games convincing wins in both and qualified easily. And I think the good thing is that for the games, they're all at Wembley, aren't they? The group games, the semi and the final are all going to be at Wembley, which would be a real bonus for us.
Yeah, indeed. I thought he played really well, actually. I thought he looked very self-assured, and I think it's pretty clear that Pickford's number one, and I don't think Southgate's going to drop him anytime soon. But it genuinely feels to me now that Pope is the natural deputy for him, so he's got to be pleased with that. As a keeper, you're very used to being behind first choices, aren't you, and having to wait your turn. So I'm sure he'll be delighted with that. Anyway, enough of this shenanigans. We have a preview show to record, Dave. Let's get on with that. We will be looking at Watford away very shortly, but before we do, we have a small matter of a quiz question that we need to address. Now, it's been a couple of weeks, but in our West Ham United preview show, we set the following quiz question. In Burnley's first Premier League season, which was 2009 to 2010, West Ham were the visitors to Turf Moor in the February and lost 2-1. Which Burnley player scored the winner on his debut with the only goal he ever scored for the Clarets? Dave, what was the answer?
The answer was Danny Fox, who we brought him in the January. We brought a couple of players in with the change of management. Danny Fox, one of the players who came in, and he scored on his debut. We didn't win many matches in the second half of that season, but the one against West Ham United, we also beat Tottenham, didn't we, the last game of the season? But we had a desperate run. But Danny Fox was the correct answer. He was that goal scorer against West Ham at Turf Moor.
He was. So who got that right, Dave?
Well, as expected, John Robertson, that's Claret Crumpet on Twitter, was quick off the mark and he tweeted us with the correct answer. And I believe Rob Thomas got in contact with us via direct message and he got it right.
He did.
And I can confirm that you, Natalie, also knew this one.
I did! I knew it!
That probably means I'm making the questions too easy, doesn't it?
That's just rude. But probably fair. Did we get any more? Do we think we got any more of those? All of them?
I think that's all. I didn't see any on Facebook.
Yeah, no, I didn't see any either. So, guys, that was a great quiz question, even though I already knew it. So we're going to have another quiz at the end of this week's preview show, and John Robertson will be very, very happy because I think we ruined his Friday last week in that he tried to tweet us an answer and it was just ... So it was quite sad.
He set his own quiz question. Did you say?
He did. Yes, he did. It was very amusing. See, none and ever breaking Friday night routines now since about 12 weeks ago. But never mind any of that. Let's get on with previewing this week's game.
Opposition stats.
So, Watford away, Saturday the 23rd of November at 3 p.m. A nice Saturday 3 o'clock kickoff. Dave, why don't you tell us all about Watford? Who are they? What's the main stats?
Well, this week's opponents began life as Watford Rovers in 1881, and the club changed their name to West Herts, that's Herts for West Hertfordshire, in 1893. 5 years later, in 1898, they became Watford, and they've stayed with that name ever since. After playing for many years in the Southern League, they were admitted to the Football League for the 1920-21 season, and they started out in the 3rd Division.
Good change of name. I don't like it. I don't trust any team that's got Rovers in there.
Well, we started out as Rovers, didn't we?
Shh! Don't mention that, Dave.
Not for
Cut it
long.
out. What about nicknames then, please?
These days Watford are known as the Hornets, and that's due to the distinctive yellow and black colour of their kit. But they were originally known as the Brewers, as the Benskins Brewery were the original owners of their ground. In the 1920s, the club introduced blue shirts for their players, and so the nickname the Blues was commonly used. But it wasn't until the 1959-60 season, when Burnley won the league title for the second time, that Watford's current colours were introduced, and the nickname of the Hornets was chosen by their supporters at the time.
I also don't trust clubs that have blue shirts as well, just for the record. Ground and capacity then, please, Dave.
Yeah, Watford play at Vicarage Road. It's got a current capacity of just over 22,000, and Burnley were given an allocation of 2,204 tickets for this weekend's game.
Which I believe we've sold out, from what I understand. It's a great travelling support by the Clarets. Moving on to their team then, Dave. Who's their all-time goal scorer?
Luther Blissett. He scored. He was playing certainly in the 80s. That's when I remember playing for Watford. He scored 186 goals in 503 matches for Watford in all competitions. Although he only ever scored once in matches against the Clarets. Troy Deeney with 5 has the most goals for Watford in past matches against Burnley.
Oh, what a shocker. Quite soul-destroyingly as well. And Never team were all discussing this on the group chat today, and I hadn't realised how close Deeney was to being back. He was actually on the bench last week, and it looks like he's going to be playing on Saturday, which is soul-destroying, because you just know that this is going to reignite their season and Deeney is going to get a bagful. Heaviest Burnley defeat then, please, Dave?
In 1980, Burnley had already been relegated a few weeks earlier, and we were resigned to having to play the following season in the 3rd Division for the first time in the club's history. The last match of that dismal 1979-80 season was a 4-0 defeat to Watford at Vicarage Road on the 3rd of May 1980. So that's our heaviest defeat at Watford.
Okay, and what about the biggest Burnley win then?
5 of Burnley's 6 away wins at Watford, we'll go into the numbers a little bit later, have been by a single goal, which makes the 3-1 victory we had in the 2010-11 season our biggest away win, and that was in February 2011 with Eddie Howe as manager. On the score sheet for Burnley was Watford's Dale Bennett with a farcical own goal via a deflection, plus Chris Eagles and Chris Sewellamo got the other goals for Burnley that day.
Excellent. Some blast from the past there. I liked Chris Iwelumo. Is it Iwelumo? Is that how you pronounce it? Iwelumo, thank you. I'm really bad with names. Burnley's last win then, please.
Our last win, that was on April the 7th, 2018. We were trailing with just 20 minutes to play by 1-0. Watford had taken the lead in the first half. Sam Vokes came on as a substitute and scored within seconds of being introduced.
Of course he did.
And then Jack Court came and scored another goal 3 minutes later, so that sealed the points for the Clarets. Final score, Watford 1, Burnley 2, a real turnaround and a really good win for Burnley towards the end of that 2017-18 season, of course, when we did so well.
Definitely. So talk us through last season's meeting then.
Last season we played at Vicarage Road back in January. We earned a point in a 0-0 draw. Both goalkeepers, that's Ben Foster for Watford and Tom Heaton for Burnley, played particularly well that day. But the most controversial moment you may recall was a second half strike from Chris Wood. It was ruled out for offside, even though the replays later suggested he was onside. Whether or not that would have changed with VAR, we'll never know.
Yeah, I'm going to go no. What about their manager then? Who's the man at the helm?
At the time of recording, Quique Sanchez Flores is Watford's current manager, although we have to say we do record this podcast in advance and can't guarantee that'll still be the case on Saturday.
We don't necessarily need to say that for every preview, do we? It's just certain clubs you go, He might still be in charge, who knows?
And giving some context on that, since sacking Sean Dyche in 2012, Watford have employed the following managers: Gianfranco Zola, Giuseppe Sannino, Oscar Garcia, Billy McKinley, Slaviša Jokanovic, Quique Sanchez Flores for the first time, Walter Mazzari, Marco Silva, Javi Gracia, and Quique Sanchez Flores again.
Goodness.
Sanchez Flores is 54 years old. He was born in Madrid, Spain in 1965. He's managed at Valencia, Benfica and Atletico Madrid, as well as for Espanyol and in Shanghai in between his two spells at Watford. Unless he's able to find a significant improvement to Watford's current form, we may well be discussing a different Watford manager by the time it comes to the return fixture next March.
Yeah, I suspect we will. I actually thought we might not have him in charge for this game. I think there was talk, wasn't there, after about 3 games in charge that he was on his way out. So, oh well. Okay, let's move on to some proper stats, some old school stats. What about the head-to-heads, please?
Yeah, we've got a decent record down at Watford. We've played there 21 times. We don't have a hugely long history against them, but 21 previous matches at their ground. We've won 6, drawn 5 and lost 10. And giving some context on that, that's a 28.6% win rate. We've only got Bournemouth and Chelsea, the only other two clubs who we play this season, who we've got a better all-time away record at. That's in all competitions. And there's only ever been 3 top-flight meetings between the two clubs at Vicarage Road, all of them with Sean Dyche as manager in the last 3 seasons. And of those games, we've won 1, drawn 1, and lost 1.
Oh, excellent! But I do quite like the fact that we've got more wins on there than anything else. That's always a bonus. Do we have any players who've played for both teams?
Quite a few, yeah, from the current squad. Burnley's Jack Cork and Matej Vidra have previously played for Watford, and Burnley, as we know, also sold striker Andre Gray to Watford.
I had no idea that Jack Cork played for Watford.
I
Is
think
that a well-known fact?
Yeah, he played at. No, I don't think so. No, I don't think he played that
Good.
many times for them. He's played for quite a few teams, hasn't he? Before he, he played for Burnley in 2 spells. He's played obviously for Swansea, memorably, but he did spend some time at Watford. May well have been on loan actually.
I did not know this. Yeah, maybe. Any others then?
Other players who've played for both include Chris Baird, Clark Carlisle, Lloyd Dyer, Chris Eagles, John Harley, Jerry Harrison, Micah Hyde, Chris Owellamo, Michael Kitely, Gifton Noel Williams, and Marvin Sordell.
Oh, it's a shame we haven't got young Bird Jr. on the preview show this week. He'd get very excited with Michael Kitely. Okay, well, let's move on to the game itself and at the weekend. Who is the man in charge? Who is our referee?
We've got Paul Tierney. He's refereed 11 previous Burnley matches since 2013, which is when we first saw him for an FA Cup third round exit at Barnsley. In that game, Brian Stock appeared to be mistakenly booked and then received a second yellow card. He was also in charge at Huddersfield in 2017 when he failed to award a blatant penalty when Jeff Hendrick was brought down by Jonas Lossell, the Huddersfield goalkeeper. I think he was the only man in the stadium who didn't think that was a penalty. Well, maybe him and the goalkeeper.
I'm still not over that.
Yeah, to date, Burnley have won 4, drawn 2, and lost 5 of Paul Tierney's matches as referee. And coincidentally, 2 of those 11 matches were against Watford. A home defeat at the start of last season. And also, he was in charge for our last away win at Watford in April 2018, which we've already discussed. His only other Burnley match last season, as well as the visit of Watford to Turf Moor, was the home defeat against the eventual champions Manchester City. Peter Banks will be his eyes and ears at Stockley Park as the Premier League perseveres and tries to get the VAR process to work properly.
Very funny, Dave.
Statman Dave's Stat of the Week.
Well, that's not enough, because I know you well enough, Dave Roberts, and I know that you like to tease us with a little bit of bonus material from the bank of Statman Dave. So why don't you give us your miscellaneous stat of the week?
Okay, this week's stat of the week is the only occasion that Burnley have played a cup tie at Vicarage Road is also the Clarets' most recent FA Cup quarter-final appearance. That was in March of 2003. A disappointing 2-0 defeat to Watford that day remains the only time that Burnley have reached the FA Cup quarter-finals in the last 35 years, although some older fans may recall us reaching that stage in 1983 or the last semi-final appearance in 1974.
Oh, that's a good stat. So how are you feeling about the game generally, Dave? I mean, you can't. You've always got to think that teams will turn it around at some point. They've had a terrible start to the season, but when Troy Deeney's in the side, he'll create some goals if he does play at the weekend. But to me, this feels like a spectacularly good chance to get another 3 points away from home.
Yeah, we know that away games are tough wherever you're going in the Premier League, whether it's the teams in the top six, whether it's teams in the relegation zone. They're always tough matches, and anything you get out of them is a bonus, really, at the end of the day. But I think these are the matches, if you want to push on, if you want to get away from that sort of bottom 5 or 6 place, away from the relegation zone and into mid-table or even the top 10, these are the matches that you need to win. So it might be a bit of a barometer of how Burnley have done so far and how we're doing. If we can come away with a victory at Watford, I think that will be a boost for us. And I think it's one of those games that is definitely winnable, but one that we wouldn't take for granted, because you can't take any away games for granted in this league.
No, and I certainly don't think that we have the mentality to take games for granted. Perhaps with the blip that was Sheffield United away, but I think on the whole they do take the game seriously. I just feel like we've got goals in us at the moment, and I feel like their defence is quite fragile. So I can certainly see us scoring 2, possibly even 3. And unless they get their shooting boots back on, they're not going to match that, I don't think. So, I think it's going to be a comfortable Clarets win as well.
Famous last words.
Fantasy Premier League update.
Okay, so we then concentrate in the second half of the preview show on the small matter of the No Nay Never Fantasy Premier League, which is just the most respectable fantasy league there is in the world. Obviously, we're now looking at the matches played immediately prior to the international break. So, Dave, why don't you talk us through the current top 3? Who are the movers and shakers?
Well, there's no change at the top. I think it's the first time we've done this so far where we haven't had a changer. I think nearly every week there's been some players who've come back to the top, but this is the first time that we've had 2 weeks in a row of the same leaders. That's Bennett Howarth rolling the Deitch team. They're still top with 740 points. 10 points further back, but going up 1 place to second with 730 points, is John Sutcliffe's Subculture FC. And just 4 points further back and falling 1 place to third position is Rob Greenwood's team, Ospina Colada. So we have the same top 3, the same leader, but the second and third places have swapped.
We do. Now, those eagle eyes among us will notice that there is a new entry in our league this year, Claret Trash, who is D Hunter. D Hunter contacted us on Twitter about around the 9th of November to say, I've been listening to the podcast. How do I get on the fantasy league? I've had a team since the start of the season. Can I have the code? And we said, yeah, that's great. There you go. Have the code. Boom. Straight in 7th place. That's bold. Massive late come up, but says, yeah, I'm just going to go and take over this league. But no, it's nice to have you, D Hunter. Claret Trash, welcome to the Fantasy League, and glad you're enjoying the show. What about the No Nay Never team then, please, Dave? How are they doing?
Well, Richard Steele's team, Count on Me, scored a very impressive 85 points in game week 12, and that lifted him up to 6th place on 699 points, and that's within striking distance of the top 3 now. He's just 27 points behind third position.
Go on then. How am I doing?
Well, the less said about your preview show hosts, the better. Natalie, you're in 162nd position out of 164 on 474 points, and I'm in 137th position on 552 points.
Yeah, whatever. Although, to be fair, right, I have started to look at this here thing, and I got really confused because I didn't understand how I could change my players. I am such a fantasy football noob. And I was like, well, I can't change my players because when I tried to switch them, it only gave me 3 or 4 options which were in my squad. I didn't even know you could do transfers. So I have this week taken out some players who are injured and also not performing very well, and I've used some transfers, and he said it was going to cost me 13 points from my points. I was like, I cannot afford that. But apparently there was some wild card thing that I could play where I could get those transfers for free. I think it's a one use only thing. So I brought some players in who play better, I've made somebody else captain, can't remember, and I'm gonna move up at least 5 places next week. That's gonna be my prediction. How do you like them apples, Dave Roberts?
Time will tell. I'm reserving judgment.
Ye of little faith. So talk us through the stats of fantasy football. What's the dream teams looking like?
Well, we had 2 Burnley players in the game week 12 dream team. That was after the West Ham game. Nick Pope was a high-scoring goalkeeper with 9 points, and James Tarkowski scored 10 points to earn him a place as one of the high-scoring defenders. That was quite impressive because Burnley were the only club with 2 players in the latest dream team, with the remaining 9 players all playing for 9 different clubs.
Indeed. Looking at the players, generally speaking, Dwight McNeil is still our top-ranking Burnley player on 49 points.
Did you transfer him in?
No, because I already had. I think he was too much. It's 6 million. That's quite a lot, actually. I don't think I had enough money for that. Because I also there's so many rules in this league. Like you can only spend this amount of millions, and oh no, you can't do that because you've already got 3 players from that. I'm like, what? Why can't I just put these players in there? I want to make it a lot easier if they got rid of these rules. I'm sure they'd probably be very easy. It would be chaos. I'd like to see them do that one season or 1 week and just see what it looks like. It would be like a wild card where you've got.
Well, you can. They have that.
Do they?
They have a wild card where basically, because I wasn't sure on this, but you go in and for 1 week you can change your team. I think you've still got limits in terms of what you can spend, but you can bring a totally different team in, and then the following week it reverts back to what you had before. Apparently, they're quite good to use in weeks where there might be teams who've got 2 games playing 2 games. We've obviously got those coming up next week, so that might be worth bearing in mind for our fantasy Premier League players.
See, there's so many rules. Finally, then the overall leading player is Jamie Vardy at a cost of 9.6 million, and 92 points. He is the league's top player, selected by 36.3% of managers. How many have picked Dwight McNeil? Ooh, only 1%. There's little faith, but there we are. That's all the stats for this week's Fantasy Premier League. We will continue to track the changes over the weekend's matches, and we'll bring you another update in the next week's preview show for the visit of Crystal Palace to Turf Moor. Now, do bear in mind that we do have 2 games next week, so Dave and I are going to record the preview show next Thursday, and we're going to preview Palace away and also City at home. So we might have to miss a week in terms of fantasy. Yeah. Of course, yes, both at home. Yeah. Thank you, Dave. Where would it be without you? So we may have one of those shows where we don't have a full fantasy football league update, but we'll see how it goes. We're going to wing it a little bit. I know that sounds shocking that you think that we're incredibly well prepared for this show, but we might have to wing it next week.
Statman Dave's quiz question.
So finally, before we leave, we have a small matter of a quiz question, my favourite part of the show. Dave, what do our listeners need to answer this week?
Okay, it seems we're playing Watford. It's a Watford-related question. And this week's question is, who was Burnley's manager for the Clarets' first ever visit to Vicarage Road to play a league match against Watford? And what was the year?
I have no idea. No idea. So it's definitely not easy this week. Well, how do our listeners submit their questions, please, Dave?
They can tweet us, that's at No Nay Never. They can post on the No Nay Never Facebook page, or they can email podcast@nonaynever.net, and we'll reveal the correct answer at the start of our next preview show, which will be available to listen to next Friday.
Excellent. Well, that is all we have time for on this week's preview show. It has been a wonderful joy to record as ever, and every week I learn something new from our wonderful, wonderful host, Dave Roberts. Godspeed to all travelling Clarets on their way down to Watford at the weekend. Stay safe, take care, and cheer our boys on to victory. My thanks as ever go to producer Matt for producing this and putting it all together and getting it published. That's very much appreciated, Matt. Thank you. But my main thanks are reserved, obviously, to the main man himself, Dave Roberts, who puts a phenomenal amount of work into this show every week, and it's just a joy to listen to. So, Dave, thank you. It's my pleasure to serve alongside you, sir. We will be back next Thursday with a preview of Palace at home, and then the team will be back for the main podcast a few days later, where we will hopefully be looking back on a fantastic win for the Clarets and our rise above the Premier League ranks. This has been the preview show brought to you by the No Nay Never podcast. Until next time.